Mr. Chairman, today our Western colleagues, the reputation of the UN Security Council has suffered another heavy blow. The Security Council, in accordance with its mandate, has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Yes, any member of the Council has the right to request a meeting on any matter. But, in accordance with the mandate of the Council has no mandate to discuss human rights. While the world looks to the Council with hope, it awaits solutions to complex global problems. He devoted himself to discussing meaningless and deliberately politicized plots. The situation on the Korean Peninsula is the most affected in this regard. The United States and its allies in the region are willing to consider in the Security Council any issues other than those that really need to be resolved to normalize the situation. Meanwhile, the United States, on the other side of the Pacific, 1,000 miles from the Korean coast, they continue to work with Japan and the Republic of Korea to increase military activities in the region, practice beheading North Korea. Many other hostilities have provoked a response in the North, forcing it to take measures to strengthen its national defense capabilities. Washington's nuclear capabilities are increasingly being demonstrated in dangerous proximity near the North Korean border. It has been pointed out on many occasions that this has brought the situation to the dangerous line of open armed conflict with unpredictable consequences. Let the sponsors of today's meeting not be surprised if the members of the Security Council have every reason to propose that this particular topic be discussed. In fact, the way to normalize the situation is to stop the provocative military activities of the United States and its allies, thoroughly review the sanctions regime, and take confidence-building measures. From these perspectives, today's meeting is a clear step in the opposite direction. We often point out that discussing the human rights situation in a one-sided and intrusive manner undermines mutually respectful cooperation, as evidenced by this. Where Western standards cooperate, the relevant United Nations agencies should pay the most serious attention to the role of unbearable goods, sanctions for trampling on the basic rights of North Korean citizens. We reiterate our position that the indefinite sanctions regime imposed by the Security Council on the DPRK needs to be revised. Mechanisms to adjust restrictions do not work for the country. There is no fair and just decision procedure for some people to wear the wipes. All other restrictive measures against individual countries have an ultimate realistic goal. Periodic audits are carried out. They include initiatives to prevent unfair punishment, such as changing mandates. In fact, North Korea is the only exception to everything. It is worth noting that he advocated holding today's meeting. The most direct complement to this inhumane policy is their illegal unilateral restrictive measures. Ms. Salman, today, she describes to us the suffering of the Korean people, especially the children. Where did this suffering come from, Mrs. Simon Kurz? They looked around because of the overlap. The initiators of today's meeting are all supply channels, including medical and life-saving equipment for the treatment of citizens and the same children. These actions deepen the suffering of the people, provoke poverty, inequality, and deprive people of normal health care, medicine, education, and technology. Are you violating the basic rights of North Korean citizens? All this is done for achievement. We note that rich and prosperous countries have geopolitical goals. We have heard more than once that no humanitarian exception has been thrown off the shoulders of barbarians, and the fragments of humanitarian assistance provided by Western goodwill have been thrown off the shoulders of barbarians. They will not be able to correct the consequences of the policy of strangling the North Koreans in any way. The hypocritical move is only to disguise the unchanging line, but to dismantle North Korea's political structure, which has been firmly resisting Washington's geopolitical appetite for decades. In fact, no one in Pyongyang's opponents cares about North Korean rights. This once again demonstrates the futility of today's debate, the sole purpose of which is to serve Western double standards in the work of the Security Council and in the field of human rights. If Western colleagues are really interested in solving human rights problems, they would then resort to the Universal Periodic Review process, which would allow for the professional treatment of the relevant issues. The panel of experts mentioned today is 1718 of whom died in Bose. Deserved all of this anti-professional activity. The so-called inspection report of former sanctions experts from Britain, South Korea, and Japan is not accidental. It is a classic custom material kindly stuffed by the so-called experts by the Kiev regime. It is compiled by laymen, and there are many procedural violations and logical inconsistencies. We call on our Western colleagues to recognize the counterproductive steps they are taking in promoting propaganda and to engage in concrete and constructive discussions on the entire issue of the Korean Peninsula. In this context, the Council must recognize that it is extremely dangerous to delay the commencement of the relevant discussions. Thank you.
I give the floor to Alexeyev is the President's visiting doctor, Gavrosh Fedorovich.
Today, Mr. President, the international community will once again witness the shameful situation of a small group of countries trying to use the United Nations Security Council as a tool to advance their own geopolitical agenda. We had no illusion that with the current composition of the Security Council, all Pyongyang's main opponents would go all out to criticize the North Korean authorities for their unsubstantiated arguments on camera, instead of finding a constructive solution to the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. Their only goal is to turn the situation on the Korean Peninsula upside down again, distract public attention from the root causes of the region's long-standing security problems. It is worth recalling that the organizers of the conference violated several purposes of the principles of the Charter of the United Nations at the same time, including non-interference in the internal affairs of states and the desire to develop friendly relations on the basis of the principles of respect and equality. We take note of the statement issued this morning by the group of Friends of the Charter of the United Nations. Opponents of the framework are well aware that their initiatives are counterproductive and undermining member states. The latter believes in working together on the human rights track and is purely for propaganda purposes. However, that doesn't stop them. They request such meetings with enviable regularity. The link between human rights and threats to international peace and security especially in the context of the Korean Peninsula, promoted by the sponsors of today's briefing, is not artificial. Attempts to introduce tasks that do not fall within its mandate will divert its attention, waste the Council's resources, politicize the debate, and thus undermine the authority of the Council as a whole. We also ask for software. The agenda of the meeting requested by the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, and the Republic of Korea was put to a procedural vote. This issue is not within the mandate of the Security Council. This is crucial for us. We strongly urge other members of the Security Council to join you and us in voting against it. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for their statement.